Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. We are back with the Kona K2. I do recall remembering I said I was going to look for some replacement nuts for this thing. Well, I did find one that's a perfect drop-in fit because the tusk nut didn't work out that I spent 20 bucks on. Too much modifications and yeah, didn't work out. So I went looking, figuring Chinese guitar, let's go to China. So Amazon it is, looking up left-handed nuts. Took my width, went from there, bingo. I found a pack of 2 plastic slotted nuts for 6-string, left-handed in this case. They do have this guitar in both left-handed and right-handed, so you will need the same dimensions, but if you're a righty, you need the right-handed nut, okay? Now, the brand is Bao Blaze, B-A-O Blaze, one word, okay? Ships from China, sold by Bao Blaze. Now, these are $7.99 Canadian, or much less in the States, for a pack of 2. So I bought 2 packs of 2 because, you know, I figured I might have to modify the slots. You don't, okay? Trust me on this. I tried it, didn't go well. So the slots are cut just fine on these nuts. They are far superior quality nut than what comes on it. Much harder plastic too, which is also very nice for tone, okay? Because soft stuff is just garbage. And the slots were cut really deep, I found, on this guitar, and that was another bad point, okay? I mean, I like a low action and all, but, you know, a little tiny bit higher than super low is usually good on something like this. So it's a little pinch difference, not by much though. So on this nut, it was a direct drop-in fit, but the action was actually way too high for my liking. It was like 2.75 millimeter at the 12th fret, and it should be no more than 2.5, which is about where we're sitting now. So I shaved about a 0.5 millimeter off the bottom of the saddle using sandpaper, of course, or in the case I ran out of sandpaper, I used emery boards, which work just as well. Women use these for their nails, okay? Buy a few packs, they're cheap at the dollar store. And so 3 emery boards later on each side, and I got about a 0.5 millimeter off. Okay, they're dollar store, they're junky, right? But they worked. So clean off the slot. Now I have a special razor sharp chisel in my collection of guitar tools that I made for just doing this sort of thing with and getting glue out of the way. So make sure that the back end of the fretboard, the old glue is gone, and be very gingerly careful when you are messing with the bottom edge, because that's where the grain of the wood's going to show through. For that, I used a very fine tooth file and got rid of the excess glue. Dropped her in, glued her in with a couple of drops of dollar store crazy glue so it holds nice, so I can also bang it off later without a problem if I ever needed to change it again, which likely I won't, but that's what I used and works fantastic. You can use wood glue too if you want, but it's going to take forever to dry. Crazy glue, get it on there, jam it, it sets, restring your guitar, tune it up, and go play. Now, the dimensions of this nut, which will be for left or right-handed Kona K2s, is going to be 1.69 by 0.24 by 0.35. Those are the dimensions you must stick with. Now, you will have a very small little hair touch once you get this sitting on here evenly. Make sure it's pinched evenly. Get your strings on there and get it shifted into place before the glue sets, okay? Very important. So once you've done this, that's it. You don't have to modify the slots, okay? They're fine. Just with the string gauge, I'm going to recommend that you use 1253s if you like a little bit thicker string, or go to 1152s. 1152s will actually give it a little bit more drop down, so a little bit lower action yet. I'm actually going to try 1152s on this. Now I am going to say this, run your neck a little straighter too. Between your 12th fret and your 1st fret, check between the 5th and the 7th fret, and I usually go around the 5th or 6th, and I've got probably about 7 thousandths of clearance between the bottom of my string and the top of the fret bar, okay? And that's where you want to measure, all right? Do not mess with the saddle unless for some reason your saddle was cut really high. This one was not. It was actually cut really low. So when I go up in to around the 12th fret and I check, on the 13th, or sorry, 12 is here. I check on the 13th, 14th. So on the 14th fret, I'm looking at the clearance, and there's maybe about 4 thousandths, 5 thousandths clearance. Still enough to ring out a note perfect, which means it's a low cut saddle, okay? Do not mess with the saddle if it's got very minimal distance, okay? Otherwise, you're just going to do nothing but buzz. And once you've modified this saddle, you're going to have to find a new one. Now, once I do change over to 1152s, I will remove the saddle, take its measurements, find one online, order one in, and we'll see how well it fits and what our heights are like, etc. for drop-in fit. Because when it comes to saddles, they're not all the same width across left and right, okay, and they're not all the same thickness, and they're not all the same heights. So you got to make sure that it matches, okay? And if you want to try going a smidge lower, give it a shot and see. But be very careful, because you drop too low, you're going to be buzzing, and that's going to be a problem. And it won't be the guitar that's the problem, it's going to be the saddle. So this saddle, like I said, is already caught really super low, so that cannot be changed, okay? But you can change your neck angle by tightening up the truss rod and straightening your neck more. Just don't go dead flat straight. Not gonna work well for you, okay? Leave just a hairball of relief so that when you fret your note, the string can rise up enough over the following fret in front of it that it can still work, okay? So this actually worked out good. So in the end, we're actually within specs for an acoustic. We've got about 2.5 millimeters at the 12th fret, which is our max, and we're about the same on the 12th fret on the high E, okay, which should be actually a little smidge lower technically, but I'm okay with the way it is. It's playing fantastic, so I'm not going to complain. I do own guitars that are much lower action, like 3 times lower, but they're also super high-end guitars in comparison. This is a $200 guitar. You're only going to get things set up, you know, so well, right? But plays great. Buzzing, no dead spots, fantastic. And the harder material plastic actually changed the tone, a little bit more appealing actually in this case. Now the strings I'm using are 1253 D'Addarios. They're not coated, they're just $7 strings, okay, in Canada. But you can use more expensive strings if you want to. But I am going to, like I said, I'm going to try 1152s on this eventually, because I know the 1152s are actually going to sit a little bit lower, and with the amount of straightness I have on my neck now, it's actually probably going to end up dead straight almost with those strings, because they're under less tension. So, and they'll sit more and more into the slots. Now, the way these slots are cut, the strings actually, when you run your finger across, your first, second, third, fourth all sit nice and flush. Your fifth is just a little bit up, just a hair, and then the sixth is a little bit higher than that. So a set of 1152s, everything should sit pretty much dead flush, okay? So you don't need to cut the slots on this. All you got to do is shave about 0.5 millimeter off the bottom, and you've got a great setup, and you'll see where your distance is, you know, on here. Now, one thing you can do too is if your guitar is playing perfectly well as far as the heights go, because it's a crummy nut they supply you, so you really got to change that nut out, especially for tuning stability too. But anyways, check the height without touching any strings. Just check the height, see what your clearance is between the top of the fret wire and the bottom of the low E, okay? And do the same for the high E as well, all right? And then this will give you a good gauge point of do I need to take off 1/2 millimeter or 3/4 of a millimeter? So look at it from that aspect. I took off 1/2, and it's really good, and I'm quite happy with the results that I got from this. The width turned out to be great. You know, there's just a slightness of overhang on the edges, which is fine. It's not a make it or break it. It's a $200 guitar, but if I want to take the time, I could knock the nut back off and just go, you know, and it'd be perfectly dead even, right? So even though specs are specs, things are made in molds, right? So nothing is 100% dead on perfect, but it's close enough. So you can shave those edges. It's not a big deal if it annoys you. It doesn't bother me one bit, because you're never playing that close to the nut anyways, or at least you shouldn't be. But it's not annoying regardless. I mean, you can barely feel it. It's barely there, so who cares, right? But 1.69 by 0.24 by 0.35. So whether you go with these cheap Chinese nuts that are like $8 Canadian for a pack of 2, or whether you find a higher quality nut, if you really want something much higher quality, then that's fine. You know, go with whatever, right? I'm going to look for other alternate choices myself to see what else is available. Because for a left-handed guitar, there's not a lot of choices out there for lefty nuts. Okay, so that's the other thing, is we have some restrictions on us as left-handed players. We don't have the same amount of selection available. So there may be 1,000 choices out there for lefties, where there's probably 10,000 choices of different nuts for righties. You know what I mean? So, and the same goes with the saddle. I'll have to take the measurements of the saddle when I go to change the strings off, find a replacement saddle for it in case this one ever dies, because I plan on keeping this guitar. You know, it's a really nice guitar, even for a cheapie. So anyway, that's what I got for you. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I will put the link in the description below for the left-handed nuts, and if I do find the right-handed of the same nuts, I will also have that link there in the video as well, where you can get the nuts from Amazon for right-handed Kona K2 specifications. But if I can't find it, it won't be there. So just keep that in mind, okay? But for sure, for the left-handed guys out there, you know, if you have a left-handed Kona K2 series, that's what you're going to need, okay? But for any of your guitars, always measure the width of the factory nut, and then see what you can find that's close enough or closest to that as a replacement, and you should be okay. But you know, I did find that as far as dimensions went in the end, 1.69 by 0.24 by 0.35, direct, perfect drop-in fit into the slot area and everything. It went in great. So I'm kind of like, awesome. And like I said, I shaved 1/2 millimeter off, straightened my neck out a bit more to get the height, or string height, or action height lower, okay? Because there's no room to mess with the saddle on this guitar anyways. So there you go. Thanks for watching. See ya!